Fair warning, this video will contain spoilers for the entire series of Death Note. So, you can't say I didn't warn you. I literally just said fair warning.
Let's talk about Death Note. So, Death Note was pretty much like the first anime I'd ever watched. Well, not the first, but one of the first. I would catch it on really late at night when Adult Swim was on, when everyone else in the house was asleep, along with other shows like Inuyasha, Cowboy Bebop, and The Boondocks. Does that count? Either way, Death Note was amongst them. And I always really liked Death Note, if I'm being honest. Yes, I was a very edgy teenager. So if you don't know, Death Note is about a Shinigami, which is a Japanese god of death, who drops his death note from the Shinigami world to the human world because he's bored, and he thinks it would be entertaining to see what happens when a human picks up a death note. He's managed to do it in a way to where he's got two death notes, one that he keeps on himself and one that falls to the human world for a human to pick up, so that way he's not empty-handed. The human that picks up his death note is named Light Yagami, who is a straight-A high school student, top of his class, pretty athletic, pretty much like an idle kid, except that he is completely unhinged.
Bruh.
Except he doesn't realize he's unhinged until after he actually gets the death note. Now, when he picks it up, he sees it fall outside this class window. He opens it up and finds that there's rules. So what the Death Note does, which the rules explain this to Light, is any person whose name is written in this note shall die. Basically, if you write someone's name in the notebook, they'll die of a heart attack about 40 seconds later. But, as Light figures out, you can pretty much control the circumstances around someone's death within reason. For instance, if you write someone can... Let's say Bill Bob. Bill Bob gets hit by a bus. Then Bill Bob will get hit by a bus as long as it's reasonable. If Bill Bob is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a cruise ship and there's no buses in sight, well, guess who's not getting hit by a bus? You win this time, Bill Bob. Light decides that he's going to use this newfound power to become, as he puts it, God of the New World. And basically by that, he is just going to become a serial killer. He decides that he's going to kill all the bad people in the world, and only he's good enough to judge all the bad people because he was the one who was granted this gift of the notebook. That plan falls apart pretty quickly, especially because within the first few days, maybe even the first day of him meeting Ryuk, who after a while introduces himself to Light, and he's like, wow, you've entered in more names in the notebook than anybody I've ever seen. Anyway, within a few days of meeting Ryuk explains that he didn't choose Light, it was just completely random. In fact, he wrote the rules of the book in English because it was the world's most common language, so the odds are whoever on Earth would find it could have an easier time reading it, and if not reading it, translating it. So right away, that shows that Light wasn't chosen for anything, but we'll hold off. So Light is killing all these criminals all over the world, and he is just so confident in himself. He's like, the police can't catch me, they don't even know if I exist. There starts to be all these fan sites for whoever or whatever is killing all these criminals, because it does start to catch on. It does become fairly obvious to the people of the world after a while that some sort of intelligence could be controlling these deaths of these criminals. And the online community has dubbed this intelligence Kira. After a while, the police force, they're definitely looking into this. Some of them around the world think that it could just be a weird coincidence. Some of them don't see a reason to look into it at all because they think if there's criminals or if they're just killing criminals, then why even bother? And others are certain that something's going on, something needs to be done about it because someone is out there taking justice into their own hands and they need to be stopped. That's where L comes in. Now, at first, L is this mysterious character hidden behind a white screen with the black letter on it. And he talks to people through a distorted voice and video calls, and he has his assistant, Watari, basically being like his in-person substitute. He's the guy who carries around the laptop or anything like that that he might need done. Essentially, he comes down to like he's kind of like L's butler, but like he's way cooler than a butler, like Alfred level butler. Maybe not Alfred level butler, but Watari's pretty up there. I don't know that much about Watari's backstory. He could definitely be an Alfred level butler. Regardless, we're going to get back on track now. L sets up this super genius plan to pretty much put Light on the spot and reveal himself. L goes on national TV with his name right there and reveals his face for the first time. It says, I am Lind L. Taylor. I am coming to get you, Kira. You will be stopped. And, that message is broadcast all over the world. Well, Light is sitting there thinking he's all super smart and he's just going to stop this in his tracks. He writes Lind L. Taylor's name in the notebook and kills him. However, L is not Lind L. Taylor. That was not L that Light just killed. As L soon reveals, that was a prisoner who is on death row scheduled to be executed today that they had just put on TV to pose as L just to see if Kira could do it. Or this to L deduces the fact that Kira needs a name and a face to kill, at least, and that proves it. Lind L. Taylor showed his face and had his name right there, dead. And another thing is that was not broadcasted worldwide. That was only in the Kanto region of Japan. No, not that Kanto region. L had used his super detective skills to figure out that the first possible Kira killing, gosh, that was hard to say, the first possible Kira killing was simply like an experiment, and which it was. Light was just testing the notebook to see if it worked on a local criminal that was only advertised on local news, and he obviously randomly died in the middle of a heart attack. L figured out that kind of matches the pattern, decided to start broadcasting in the Kanto region of Japan. I think he was going to move on to other places after that, but he got a hole in one. He struck gold in the first place he attempted. This is pissing Light off, and also this is the first truly evil moment I think Light has. I think something really changes in him here. Now, obviously, something changes when he gets the notebook because he starts murdering people. However, he's twisting it in his head he's always twisting his own justice in his head, but he's twisting it in his head that these people are criminals, they deserve to die, and the legal system isn't going to take care of them, so I will, okay? It's not a completely appropriate mindset to have. However, you can put yourself in his shoes and kind of understand where he's coming from, right? Like, whether you agree with it or not, it's understandable to a certain extent. However, when he kills Lind L. Taylor, he believes he is killing the head of the police, an innocent man, not a criminal, who is simply trying to help catch a killer. So, him. And at this point, Light stops thinking about putting the new world first. Light is thinking about Light and how Light wants to win. This becomes a game for him between him and L at this point. And both of them see it as that way. Both of them see it as a race to catch each other first. This is when things get very interesting, because that's when not too long after this, you find out that Light's dad is actually the head of the Japanese police department and is working directly with L. This is actually good news for Light because this gives him more of an inside look at what the police are doing. And later on, it ends up getting his foot in the door to be on the Kira task force himself. Now, at this point, L has accumulated a Kira task force, which is everyone who is willing to hunt down Kira and risk their lives, which a lot of people drop out. A lot of people don't want their name. Well, they don't know how they get killed. A lot of people don't want to die catching this guy. So it really only comes down to a few people, and Light's dad being one of them. L has a suspicion that it could be somebody related to the police force, or at least has someone in proximity of someone in the task force or the police that could be Kira, because at some point, Kira, he reveals he knows a little bit too much information that the public doesn't know. So that's why Elle thinks that it could be somebody who is either in the police or close to someone who is in the police. So they bug Light's house. They put cameras all over the place. He's followed. This leads to one of the best lines in anime, nay, media history.
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
Death Note is deliciously dramatic about all the smallest things. Light cleverly hides from all the cameras, and Ryuk is forced to not eat apples this entire time, because I forgot to mention Ryuk is addicted to apples. He claims they're like cigarettes, and he even goes through withdrawals if he doesn't have them. So he's always like twisting up in weird positions and like begging Light to like go outside for a little bit so he can eat an apple or something throughout this whole ordeal. Pretty hilarious. Ryuk is the best character, no doubt in my mind. And like I said, Light's also being followed by an FBI agent, and the only reason he finds this out is because Ryuk actually tells him. Ryuk says it's kind of annoying that he's following him. Light does an excellent job of disguising himself as a typical high school student. He goes out on a date, he studies all night. Meanwhile, he's constantly finding ways to kill criminals to make it look like Kira is still going on, even though he's seemingly innocent, right? It comes down to it, he has a super elaborate plan where he ends up killing the FBI agent who's tracking him. Again, very evil, especially since that FBI agent just had cleared him. Honestly, if Light didn't kill this guy, he might have been in the clear. But regardless, he does. This gets the attention of everyone who's looking for Kira, but in particular the guy's wife or fiance, who actually had previously worked for Elle. She wants to go join the task force to kind of like catch Elle up on what's going on. And however, Light ends up running into her on her way there and kind of makes her kill herself, and her body would never be found. It's really dark. It's a really dark episode. Like I said, eventually, Light, with his excellent intelligence, his great charisma, his weaselness, he eventually weasels himself into the Kira task force, essentially hunting himself. But really, he's trying to help throw the scent off of his trail. And he wants to find out Elle's true name. Now, around this point, Ryuk tells Light something. There's a deal that a Shinigami can make with a human. And that deal is, if that human sacrifices half of their remaining lifespan, they get Shinigami eyes, which essentially allows them to view the remaining lifespan and the name of other humans. Can you see why a Light might consider this? Now, he doesn't, because according to him, he wants optimal time to, be God of the New World. So he's got to try to figure out another way to get Elle's real name. At this point, it's just a big cat and mouse game between Light and Elle. So, like, Light joins the task force. Well, Elle goes to Light's college that he got into. They play an extremely intense match of tennis together, where they are completely overanalyzing every single move the other one's making. And it pretty much just solidifies Elle's belief that Light is Kira, and it just makes Light that much more determined to kill Elle. Everything is kind of going on like this until there's a message from Kira to the public on a Sakura TV station. And Light did not issue this message, let me make that clear. So that means there's another Kira, and this person has written a name down to prove that they are Kira. They wrote the name down of somebody else who's on another live television set. They're like, flip to this channel, you'll see this person die. You do, they do, you flip back, and Kira continues talking. Obviously, Light knows this isn't the original Kira, but Elle also believes that it's not the original Kira. Elle is saying that this is not the regular Kira's motif. This person just killed a random, like, studio host or TV show host. So, like, why would Kira do that? He kind of baits Light by asking him, well, what do you think about this? And Light thinks about it for a second. He goes, well, I think that this is probably not the original Kira. Elle's a little surprised, but they both end up trying to figure out who this second Kira is. Well, it turns out it's pretty much a huge fangirl of Light. Enter Misa. She is a model in Japan, as well as super obsessed with Kira, and is in fact the second Kira. She's got her own death note, her own Shinigami named Rem. Apparently, Kira had killed a person who killed her parents or something, and she saw that as justice, so therefore she would do anything for him. She ended up getting her death note. It's kind of a complicated story, I won't get into it too much, but there was a third Shinigami that would watch Misa all the time. He was obsessed with her. Misa was about to get killed one day, so the other Shinigami wrote the killer's name in the notebook, thus saving Misa, yet apparently that is a way to kill a Shinigami by trying to save another human's life, not take it away like Shinigami are supposed to do. And then that guy turned into dust. Rem picked up his notebook, figured it was only right to give it to Misa, then Misa's got the second notebook and is the second Kira. Alright, back on track. She just kind of shows up at Light's door one day, introduces herself as his girlfriend. He had already kind of told his mom and sister that he has a girlfriend, so it wasn't too surprising, yet I don't think they expected her like this. Light ends up allowing Misa to kind of be at his side, almost purely for the fact that she is, one, basically willing to be his slave, two, she's got the Shinigami eyes. She made the deal. Now, this might not be too bad for Misa because the Shinigami that had basically killed himself to save her, his remaining lifespan went to Misa. So, theoretically, Misa's going to live for a really long time. So, having her lifespan cut in half at first sounds pretty bad, but, I mean, it could still be like hundreds of years, so it might not be that bad at all. So now all Light's got to do is get Misa to see Elle so she can tell Light Elle's name and they can kill Elle, right? Yeah, easy. Sounds like a good plan. Light is loving this. So he ends up going to school, ends up running into Elle there, who is also going by Ryuzaki at some points, but I'm just going to call him Elle. While he's kind of chit-chatting with Elle, Misa actually runs up out of nowhere saying she was doing like a shoot nearby or something, knew Light's schedule or something, because of course she would, but wanted to stop by and see Light. She ended up running into Elle, of course. Elle introduces himself as Ryuzaki. However, Misa's in her head, she's like, but that's not the name I see above your head. And Light in his head is like, Elle, you fool. You have no idea that you just let me win. Blah, 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 blah. But screw you, Light. Elle acts like he's a fangirl of Misa's. Misa ends up kind of drawing a crowd. She thinks someone touches her butt at some point, where Elle immediately jumps up, starts defending her, and he's like, "This, I will not stand for this." Anyway, things kind of settle down. Misa's manager or whatever comes over and pulls her away. Light is feeling super cocky, thinking he just won, and he's about to call Misa to get Elle's real name. He actually does call her. When he does call her, he hears a phone ring behind him. It's in Elle's hand. Elle swiped Misa's phone. So obviously that's looking pretty suspicious. This kind of takes Light off. And it's just kind of like this intense, like, if you give me your phone, I'll go give it to her. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. And then, he ends up giving Misa's phone to Light. And then L's phone, his actual phone, starts to ring. He picks it up, he talks on it for a little bit, and then he hangs up and he tells Light, by the way, figure I should let you know, Misa's just been arrested for being the second Kira. What? You done goofed, my guy. You done goofed. Because Misa, let me tell you, she is not as careful as Light is. Now, Light sucks. I hate Light. He is a terrible, terrible person. But he is pretty smart. Does he think he's smarter than what he is? Yes, absolutely. But he is very intelligent and he is careful for the most part. However, Misa was not nearly as careful. The tapes that she had sent to the TV station ended up being traced back to her somehow, I think. I could be wrong, but regardless, they ended up finding out that it's her. They take her in for questioning, and it's some pretty, BDSM kind of stuff they got her strapped to here. It's pretty much just like a dolly that they tied her to. She can't see anything because they don't know how she's killing people. All they know is that she needs a face. They just think she needs to look at someone's face and boom, they're dead. So they got Misa there. They're questioning her and everything. They're interrogating her, and then Light ends up coming up with this plan. He realizes that if you give up your ownership of the Death Note, you lose all memory of the Death Note. So, after a while, Misa ends up giving up her ownership of the Death Note while in captivity, which makes her innocence that much more believable. Then you got Light, who at this point Rim gives him the other Death Note, so he's kind of got both of them. He comes up with this super elaborate plan that involves him being in a cage for months to prove that he's not the actual Kira. Meanwhile, all these killings are going on. Everybody else in the task force is pretty convinced that Light's not Kira, other than L. L is like, how are they doing this? There's something going on. But, all the evidence is just showing that Light is not Kira, After, 2 weeks of Light being locked up, like I said, the killings are going again. But L doesn't want Light to know that the killings are going again. Oh, I forgot to mention, Light had, while he was in captivity, after about, I'd say a week or something, after a little while of being in captivity, he relinquishes his ownership of the Death Note. And Ryuk's just like, alright, later. And bails, all these killings are going on. And after a while, L is just kind of like, alright, I don't have a way to prove that Light is Kira or Misa is the second Kira. Though he is pretty positive that Misa is the second Kira, L is starting to suspect that there is a way to forget that you own a Death Note, but he doesn't he doesn't know what a Death Note is. He's still pretty clueless on everything. So he ends up kind of letting them go, but Light is handcuffed to him, so he can't try anything tricky. And then you have L and a Light who doesn't remember that he's ever owned a Death Note, and Misa and the task force all trying to catch Kira, who is out there because killings are still going on. So what had happened is Light actually told Rim to give it to somebody, to give the Death Note to somebody who's extremely powerful and money hungry, but they just have the conditions where they had at least had to fill one page with names every day of criminals. So it looks like Kira's still going on. She gives it to this head of this company. He and a bunch of the other higher ups of the company get together. They don't know which one's Kira. They decide on what person in another rival company would be good to kill to help benefit their company. And eventually L, Light, and the rest of the task force end up finding out who the real Kira is with the help of Misa. They're kind of going to investigate these guys, and they send Misa in as kind of hey, she could be a spokesperson for your company. But while she's there, Rim is there because she gave the other guy the Death Note. She has Misa touch the Death Note so her memories will come back. And she's like, listen, like, Kira's out there. I'll be standing behind him. Bada bing, bada boom. They end up catching the fake Kira. When they catch the fake Kira, it's like all this intense stuff happens, but I'm just cutting to the chase. I'm skipping over a few plot points that, get from A to B. But regardless, Elle and Light catch this new Kira. The new Kira explains, or he can write names of people in a book, and as long as he has their face in mind, he can kill them. He shows the death book. People start touching it. They start seeing Rim, which is like right behind them. They start freaking out because, Shinigami. Eventually, Light gets a hold of the Death Note, which he remembers everything in that moment. So, Light is holding on to it for a little bit, and he knows since he does not have ownership, as soon as he gives up his, as soon as he hands the book away, he will lose his memory of it. So what he's trying to do real fast is he very sneakily, he writes the name of the stand-in Kira to kill him. So he's no longer the owner of the Death Note. So Light becomes the owner of the Death Note, and also the stand-in Kira won't give away any more information about anything. And then Light regains all of his memory. Everyone thinks they caught Kira. Whoop-de-doo. Now Light's just gotta kill Elle. So how does he do that? Well, Light, that scummy scumbag, he kind of throws Misa under the bus. He has it set up in a way to where Elle is going to investigate Misa more. Pretty much they can guarantee Misa is the second Kira. Elle's going to look into it more. If they find out Misa's the second Kira, Misa will either be executed or spend life in prison or whatever. Rim can't have that. So Rim figures out Light's plan and realizes that he has had it planned for her to write Elle's name in the notebook so Misa can live, but this would also kill Rim. Now, Rim is very protective over Misa. This whole time she's been saying, Light, if you hurt Misa in any way, I'll kill you. And Light's kind of had to keep Misa safe, and that's actually why he did the whole forget the Death Note thing in the first place, is because Rim wanted him to save Misa or else he was going to die. So that was his way of saving Misa. So Rim, knowing what she's doing, writes Watari, for some reason, and Elle's name into the notebook, killing them both, but also killing Rim herself because she's saving another person's life.
Which, I mean, if she's going to just go ahead and kill herself anyway by killing Elle and Watari, why not just go ahead and kill Light while you're at it? But anyway.
And Light pretty much wins. For now, at least. Light kind of becomes the new Elle for a little bit. He continues the investigation to capture Kira. Obviously, it doesn't end up going anywhere because he is both Elle and Kira now, which, rest in peace, Elle, man, that was not cool. Now, after Elle dies, the series does kind of go downhill, in my opinion. It's like the first half of the series, well, at least while Elle is alive, feels like a really good movie, but then after Elle dies, it's just a not as good sequel, if that makes sense. So, it turns out that Elle and Watari had a couple apprentices for Elle in case something were to happen to him. Their names were Nier, who is essentially like a copy of Elle, except he's got white hair, and instead of liking sweets, he likes toys. And then we have Mello. Mello being a bit older and edgier than Nier. He's about 15 when we were first introduced to them, and then it cuts to like a 5 or 6 year jump after a while. Now, since Elle died before he was able to pick one of them, they have to try to figure out who's going to be the successor for Elle. And Mello eventually decides that he's just going to leave that position for Nier, and he kind of ends up taking things in his own direction, whereas Nier is working with the American police force to try to find Kira. Mello decides he's going to kind of like work with like underground gangs and everything. Nier, like I said, he's working with the American police, and they eventually end up working with the Japanese police and the Kira task force. Therefore, they're working with the new Elle. Therefore, they're working with Light. And Nier pretty quickly starts suspecting that this new L, Light, is in fact Kira. Light, by the way, just becomes more and more insufferable from this point on. Like, it is very clear he does not care whose life he is destroying to get what he wants. Like, he has more and more groupies, people willing to do whatever he says just because he is Kira. He ends up like having like TV shows in his name, and it's just, none of this is good for his already inflated ego. Eventually, though, Nier, as it turns out with the help of Mello, is able to bring Light's reign to an end. Nier sets up this meeting with the American task force and the Japanese task force, essentially bringing everyone who knows of the Death Note's existence together, because even though Kira is popular, the general public doesn't know how Kira is killing people, i.e. the Death Note. And when he does set up this meeting, Light sets up this trap to where he's going to have, like, pretty much one of his biggest groupies. Trust me, like, this guy's got some issues. Or he made a deal with the Shinigami, so he's got the eyes. So he's going to be writing down the names of everyone in that room, pretty much leaving Light to be the only man standing. However, in a series of I knew you were going to do that, so I did this moments, Nier reveals that he has replaced that guy's Death Note with a replacement Death Note. And they did not notice. So eventually they're like, hey, why don't you come on in here? The guy comes in. Nier's like, let me look at this Death Note. He looks at it and he's like, just as I thought. All of our names are written here except for Light Yagami's. This must mean that he is Kira. By the way, before all this goes down, Light's like, how many seconds ago did you write down their name? And he's like, 30. And he's like, well, Nier, looks like I win. And that just makes Light look even more guilty. So, after Nier reveals that he had replaced the Death Note with the fake, and Light's just kind of caught red-handed, he starts freaking out. He really does go into a huge panic. He starts trying to lie his way out of it. He's trying to accuse Nier of framing him. He's trying to get people to write their names in the Death Note, like people of the task force. He's trying to write names in there himself with his own blood at one point, even after he gets shot by Matsuda, a guy who's been on the task force since the beginning. And like, oh man. I forgot to mention about how Light caused his own dad to die on the hunt for Kira, and he just completely, like, does not care at all. And, like, Light's dad has been, like, sticking by his side through everything. Like, Light's dad is a good dad, even though he's kind of blind to the fact that his son is a mass murderer. He was still a good dad, and Light just like let him die, and he just like lied to his face on his deathbed and everything, and like was even trying to get his dad to murder on his deathbed. And by the way, if you use the Death Note, you can neither go to heaven nor hell. He convinced his dad to use the Death Note and get the Shinigami eyes. So, like, Light just screwed his dad over in life, in death, and in the afterlife. And he freaking sucks. And Matsuda knew this. And Matsuda was pissed at Light. He was ready to kill him right then and there. Eventually, Light's able to run away, and they're just kind of like, where he can't go very far. And at this point, Ryuk kind of realizes that his entertainment is coming to an end. This little story he got to witness go down because he was bored and dropped the Death Note down into the human world is finally starting to wrap up. And just as he promised Light at the beginning of the series, he will be the one to write Light's name into his own Death Note. So Ryuk does. Light dies. Pathetic. Alone. Wounded. In an empty warehouse somewhere, it looks like. And that's it. That's the end of Kira. Misa does live through it all, but to be honest with you, I don't think she has any recollection of the Death Note at this point. Light's reign of terror has finally come to an end.
Death Note is a series that's always stuck with me, mainly the anime and the manga. There are a few spin-offs and live-action adaptations as well, some worth checking out if you're a fan of the series, and some, well, not. It tells the tale of a great mental chess match between Light and L, and of course eventually Mello and Nier as well. But as I said previously, it's really the part of the series with L that tends to be the most remembered. It's so engaging seeing how they always try to one-up each other. Even without the supernatural aspect, it would be a great detective story on its own. But speaking of the supernatural aspect, the lore is very interesting for how the universe works. There's a theory that Light is reincarnated as a Shinigami himself, as seen here. As you can see, this Shinigami has brown hair and a jacket similar to Light's, with the red tie that's used as a headband. It even has a limp, which could be attributed from when Light was injured in the last episode. He has no memory of his past, but seeks out Ryuk to know about the human world to cure his own boredom. I think it's a neat idea that users of the Death Note are being reincarnated as Shinigami. It seems fitting, however, I still kind of think that Light deserves worse. The series is also a great thought experiment. What if you were the one to find the Death Note? Would you use it? Would you use the Shinigami eyes? Would you lock it away forever? And on the other side of that, would you try to catch someone who was using the Death Note? How would you do it? It's definitely a series worth checking out if you haven't yet. I try not to give away every cool part, so you should still be able to enjoy the ride even if you know where it ends. As for me, I had a lot of fun revisiting the series after so many years, and I look forward to coming back to it years down the road to enjoy it again. Maybe I'll check out the live adaptations again and the spin-offs to make a video about those, but that's it for now.
Well, guys, I do definitely appreciate you watching this video. I hope you liked it. I put a lot of work into this one. So if you did like it, please leave a like, comment, feel free to subscribe too. I definitely have more content coming out. I want to have more animations, and while I'm working on animations, I'll be working on longer videos like this. Definitely be sure to stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for the amount of subscribers I have. Right at the time of filming this, I have 396 subscribers, so I'm right there on the cusp of 400. My goal is to get to 1,000 by the end of the year, and realistically, I think we can do it. Now, if you would have asked me this 2 months ago, I would have been like, no way. But yeah, some of these Pokemon animations have really spiked in popularity, so I'm going to roll with it. If you're tired of the Pokemon content, I'm sorry, I will be making more of it, but at the same time, it is not the only thing I'm going to be doing, obviously. Again, just thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.